Okay, perfect. All right, perfect. Thanks. So, as Domenico said, I'm here to talk with you about international law and the framework that is regulating plastic at the international level, and also how youth can have a really important place to part to play in this framework. Actually, so I'm Suzanne Astic. I'm a jurist in international and European environmental law, and I've been working in the past in several NGOs, and especially one that dedicated to tackle plastic holistically. So I'm really happy to be here to share some ideas on how we could engage at the international level, but I want that to stay, a discussion. So if you have any question, any comments, any ideas on how we can engage, I'd be really happy to hear that and to discuss about that. So just first of all, as a context, and I think you all know that, but I think it's important to remind that because it's also the core of the advocacy we can lead as the young people at the international level. It's the fact that as young people, we are most exposed to hazards coming from plastics. And there are many studies proving that, actually led by NGOs, but also scientists in general, that demonstrate that plastic is like the major issue for present and future generations, and that the plastic and the chemicals that are contained in the plastic are really particularly impacted children and youth. So for instance, we can find EDCs, so it's endocrine disrupting factors, in many plastic components, and that lead to an increasing rates of endocrine related diseases and disorders among children. So we must, have a specific place that is open for us in international fora, as we are really impacted by the plastic exposure in our daily lives. And for instance, the ILO, the International Labor Organization, as well as UNICEF in 2020 underline how much plastic is impacting the children daily life. And it's not only about pollution at the very early stage of plastic. It's a holistic issue, and for instance, it's waste dumps and in the waste sectors. A lot of child are put into forced labors, and especially as a result of the COVID crisis, as we see like the amount of plastics produced and wasted is increasing. So it's important to keep in mind that young people are impacting all across the life cycle of plastic, and that is also why we have a really important voice in the decision making fora. And I think this is really the core um, motivation of our advocacy. It's that we are particularly impacted by plastics and the related chemicals. And once we know that, we have a great weapon actually to influence the lawmaking process at the United Nations. And this is the first part I would like to underline is actually, we have really important rights that are enshrined by many international conventions, and we have to use these rights in the relevant decision-making fora, because actually member states have obligations to hear us and to enable us to really share our story, share how much we're impacted by plastics. So we have a triptych of rights that are enshrined in many international conventions and regional conventions as well in international environmental law. So we have a right of participation, so a right to participate in, including in decision-making for instance, the United Nations, but also amongst member states, for instance, the European Union. And you also have a right to access information. And we know that information is key when it comes about plastics and microplastics, because this can be such a difficult technical topic sometimes. And we have to have access to the great tools to have a great training and education on these topics. So having access to data is key here, and we have a right to access to them actually. And finally, we have the right to access to justice. And this is another crucial one when you see, for instance, increasing climate litigations. And when we see, for instance, member states or even companies that are really not complying with their commitments and that are causing pollution, for instance, it's so important to have right to access to justice. It's a little bit more complicated to access to courts at the international level, because usually international courts are concerning cases between member states and member states. So it's a member state to member states litigation, but you have at least access to justice at the national courts. So it's really important to keep in mind, of course, it's the last resort cases when you are, directly impacted by a pollution, for instance, chemicals pollution linked to production of plastics. But this is an option to keep in mind, and that you are until you are enshrined and entitled with this right to have access to justice in national courts. So there are several agreements and conventions that are existing at the international law level. So you have the Regional Aarhus Convention and the Escazú Agreement that gives rights to people, and that includes young people, of course, and it creates positive obligation for the states. So this positive obligation aspect is really to keep in mind that states have committed to respect this triptych of rights. And I invite you to have a look, for instance, at Article 3.7 of the Aarhus Convention that really is a good example of how young people can have rights and what are the positive obligations that are entailed from the states, and they are forced to respect them. Once we know that, it's great to see actually where we can participate and to identify the areas or where we can advocate and lobby in terms of decision-making processes that are ongoing. And the most important one right now at the international level is the UNEP 5. So it stands for the United Nations Environment Assembly. It's basically the highest forum you can have in terms of environmental decision making, lawmaking, and this decision making process concerning the environment. So it's hosted by the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, and it's gathering all the highest representative of all the states throughout the world, gathering to discuss about the environment. And concerning the marine litter and plastic pollution in general, we have a great background here, because in 2017 at UNEP 3, it was the first time that the agenda explored global governance issues and identified gaps and considered options to tackle the marine pollution. So it was really an important moment where member states and all the stakeholders said, okay, plastic pollution has to be in the agenda of UNEP. At UNEA 4, 2 years later, several resolutions were tabled to really catalyze international action and to maybe try to have real concrete commitments from the member states. But unfortunately, there were no concrete results in terms of engagement and commitment from the member states, because some member states, such as the United States, it was at this time under Trump administration, were really reluctant to really commit further concerning tackling, plastic pollution. And so it continued with a mandate of the expert group working on this topic at UNEP 5. It was extended. So basically the discussion and advocacy for international solution are now, going on at UNEP 5, and it's in 2022. So it's now, the momentum will be probably now to really discuss about this topic and hopefully have concrete solution. So UNEP 5 will be in person because it will be like the second session of this United Nations Environment Assembly, and it will take place on February 2022. So concerning what is at stake at UNEP 5, it's an opportunity for the member states and stakeholders to really share best practices, on sustainability, and also to have this momentum between governments to engage on how to build back better and how to recover in a green manner, and especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. And here we can see, a room to discuss about plastic pollution, especially after the COVID pandemic, with personal protective equipment, for instance, we have an increasing plastic pollution. So it really falls under the agenda and the goal of UNEP 5. And the overall theme is strengthening actions for nature to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And here we can see the perfect opportunity to discuss about solution concerning plastic and plastic pollution, and of course marine litter and microplastics. And it includes the adoption of an internationally binding agreement to tackle plastic pollution holistically. And this is the core request we are targeting as young people right now, in line with many NGOs. In this high-level forum, it's the main request, because right now we are lacking such an instrument, a international legal instrument, which is binding for the member states to tackle plastic pollution holistically. So it's the key request. I continue about that later on, but I think the wording holistically is super important. Holistically is about thinking about the plastic crisis, not only at the end of life cycle, so the waste stage, but also, at the downstream and upstream stage as well. So how plastic is produced, what are the impact of the production of plastic and petrochemicals industries, for instance. Also, what are the impact of our consumption? So it's thinking holistically in terms of life cycle, but it's also thinking holistically on how much plastics is actually impacting the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's not only about protecting life below water. It's also, when we are talking about preventing plastics, it's also talking about preserving the climate, preserving good health and well-being through prevention from exposure to hazardous chemicals that are contained in plastics. So it's impacting a lot of SDGs, including clean water and sanitation as well. So when you have this picture in mind, this broader picture, it's super important because it reinforces our advocacy. Actually, we are telling the member states, you have to fight against plastic and commit against plastic, not because it's impacting actually the whole agenda for sustainability that has been agreed at the international level. So just keep in mind this really broad picture. And we had, concerning the steps forwards, we had great wins previously in September 1st and 2nd of 2021, because ahead of UNEP 5, it was, a ministerial conference on marine plastics, on plastic pollution and marine litter took place, both in person and virtually. And it was a really great momentum actually to have these member states gathering and trying to see what they are going to talk about exactly at the UNEP 5. Because, drafting the agenda for UNEP 5 is a really long process, and they actually gathered concerning this very specific topic on plastic pollution. And it was a really great meeting with diplomats delegation at the United Nations. And eventually it was, the great result was we had drafted ministerial statements endorsed by many countries, and that calls for UNEP 5 to really establish an intergovernmental negotiating committee towards a new global agreement. So for us, after lots of advocacy, actions, and the great work led by NGOs to really ask for a global agreement to be discussed, it was a huge opportunity and a great win to see that many countries actually agreed on the need for this agreement, especially after all the reluctance we saw in the past, during UNEA, the previous UNEA. So right now, more than 40 countries endorsed these statements. The deadline was on the 15th of October 2021. And I invite you actually to have a look if your country is on the list or not. Fingers crossed it is, but otherwise it means maybe we have to keep on working with, for instance, the delegation of the countries who didn't sign yet, and also locally and nationally asking them to endorse this kind of statement, or at least change their position and see why they don't want to discuss about this treaty, and see how we can change the position, through lobbying, from raising awareness, and asking urgently to adopt this treaty. And so how we are doing that actually at UNEP 5.2 is that as a MGCY, so the major group for children and youth, we are working on marine litter and microplastic specifically for our working group, and we are holding mandate to participate in United Nations fora. So it's a great opportunity to ask the delegation directly to adopt a globally legally binding agreement on marine litter. That's an important request we have amongst many others, but at this international forum of UNEP 5, it's maybe right now the biggest one because it entails a lot of consequences also concerning, for instance, data sharing, capacity building of states, financial supports of the developing countries, because this globally binding agreement will be a major step to increase action to combat marine pollution. And we are asking member states to think about that holistically, as I said, not only in terms of end stream and waste management, but also preventing unnecessary plastic from being produced, promoting sustainable economy, a greener economy for circularity, for instance, eco-design, etc. So we are asking, to really take commitments respecting this holistic approach. And the ways we are doing that through the MGCYs, that we are advising the United Nations systems engagement. So we have been, attending and participating in many major fora, preparing UNEA. So obviously UNEA 5.1, which was the most administrative and procedural part of this meeting, but it was a really important one as well. Also the Committee of Permanent Representatives of UNEP, so it's gathering the delegations to prepare the agenda of UNEP 5, the Ministerial Conference as well, and the ad hoc open handy expert group working on this specific topic at UNEA. And we also are facilitating participation of young people through the working group on marine litter and microplastics. So for all of us to have access to this forum, and to really be able to share position, and also to have an harmonized position, and so gathering a lot of different views from many different young people around the world on several topics. So it can be citizen science, for instance, capacity sharing, and just gathering everything and having a really aligned position and a really efficient advocacy and engagement. So we are drafting position papers, discussion papers, we are delivering statements, we are trying to reach also stakeholder structures, so NGOs, we are trying to build partnerships and to participate to all the platforms and mechanisms that are available for us in the United Nations system. And we are also, of course, organizing webinars, capacity building conferences, and also participating in this kind of a great event of Climathon. So yeah. I think today is a great example of what we are doing actually. And also so on the international part, I think it's a big picture. Of course, there are many other international agreements, but it's sometimes really specific. And you just keep in mind that plastic is actually such a broad topic. It's covered by many agreements, even indirectly. For instance, all the international agreement concerning waste, chemicals, so the Basel Convention on hazardous chemicals, the Stockholm Convention of persistent organic pollutants, for instance. So these are international agreements that are relevant for plastic, but for now, as MGCY, at least we are engaging mainly at the United Nations Fora. But yeah, just keep in mind that unfortunately the plastic crisis is like everywhere, and it's impacting all areas of our environments. And to have a great advocacy, we need to keep this broader picture in mind. But I just want to, I don't know if I have the time to go through it. Domenico, just tell me. But yeah, I just had some
Yes, you can
slides
go.
on. Okay, perfect. So it's just some slides of what we can do in a daily life to really advocate against plastics. So just to identify some areas to act as young people, and I think. And maybe this is a one that is really personal to me because I've been engaging in that a lot. But basically, NGOs is so important. It's such a great opportunity to engage as young people and to make our voice heard, because I saw a lot of NGOs that are really eager to have the experiences for young people, and to hear our stories and our ideas as well, to be creative on how we can act together hand in hand against plastics. So it's many NGOs that are sharing great data campaigns and studies on plastics. So for instance, you have Surfrider, Zero Waste, WWF, the Center for International Environmental Law. You have many great NGOs that are really willing to make young people part of their process, of their work, of their strategies, and they are really willing to give us, some opportunity to really express directly, for instance, in conferences. And the best way for us to support them as well is to share their works, because we are, publishing great studies that provide us with great data and information and education on these topics. And it's really awesome if you can share their works on social media, because it's one of the best way, for instance, to support them and share information to your friends. So obviously NGO is key, and you can join them. I think you all know that as a volunteer, but it's super nice to just also create social link and feel less alone in this fight, uh, and to see that we are a whole group of young people fighting against plastic, and it's so nice to be part of these local groups. It's awesome. And also just taking part, of course, overall at Climate Strike and all the events that are related to plastic, but not only, also climate, because it's obviously interconnected issues. And also another idea is that, of course, you can work in the environmental sphere as a professional. And sometimes a lot of people say, yeah, no, there is nothing in the environment, you cannot work in the environment. But actually, of course, we can work there, and it's an amazing field to be in and to feel useful and to really use your knowledge and your skills to really protect the environment and your health as well, and the communities and society as a whole. And I saw there are many fields to thrive here. So we need like people in communication, we need people in advocacy and law, in sciences, in data processing, in IT, in design. So there are so many ways you can participate in fighting against plastics in your professional career. So it's a really great way to combine your skills, your will to protect the environment, your health, and your job. So yeah, just it's an idea like this. um, and how to engage, I think using the training is key. Actually, it's the starting point, because we cannot fight what we don't know. So training, education on these topics, which are quite technical sometimes, especially when it comes about chemicals and microplastics. The best way actually to have a really effective advocacy against marine pollution is to know really well the topic and what are the great solution, and identifying also the wrong and false solution and alternatives. So the best way to act against marine pollution, and especially for instance in international fora, it's to really identify the main problems and how to solve it. And of course it's a never ending issue, the plastic issue, unfortunately, but just keeping in mind this picture of the whole life cycle problem, and not only focusing at the end of a life stage. Just also to, for instance, ask member states to not only act on waste management, even though it's super important, of course, but also by preventing plastic from being produced, by creating the great incentives, for instance, on companies to really create real alternatives to plastics. And this is having, the whole circularity loop in mind, and to see the problem as a loop and advocating at all fronts. It's super intensive, it's super, engaging, and it requires a lot of training on these topics, but it really helps to have a holistic approach of a problem, and having a great efficient advocacy here. And another advocating space I would see is to, of course, put direct pressure on your states, government, and municipalities. So we don't, sometimes we don't think about that, but local authorities are responsible in terms of legal obligations. They are responsible for um, many areas concerning plastics, and it's really important to keep in mind that, for instance, on the waste issue, there are in many countries, local authorities and municipalities have a responsibility in waste management, and especially solid waste management. So it's important to have a dialogue with them, but also to report when it's possible, when you see that public authorities are failing their obligations. You can report to the relevant local NGOs, you can report to sometimes even the national courts, because this is impacting directly your human rights and your capacity to enjoy a healthy environment. So, and they have obligation in terms, for instance, of administrative legal codes. There are a lot of judicial tools you can use to really ask them to comply with their commitments when it comes about waste, but only also, for instance, water pollutions. So yeah, I think it's really a great place to advocate as well. And also it's a great level, the local level. It's a great place to ask for further education, dialogue, and public awareness campaigns by maybe building partnerships. I'm thinking about partnerships between localities and schools, and for instance, to promote waste minimization, environmental on disposal. So yeah, just to check if there is any, authority in your region or in your city that is willing to act a little bit more on awareness raising around plastics. It could be a really great way to advocate against marine and plastic pollution. And another space, of course, and it's a really important one, and sometimes we feel a little bit, as an individual, I know we can feel a little bit desperate and useless on this point because we don't know how to really change things. But I think there are a lot we can do actually on businesses and companies. So overall, we must advocate for sustainable design products and packaging materials, and not tolerate false alternatives and wrong solutions. And there are many ways to do so, and the name and shame strategy could be one important one actually, because pointing out like malpractices or, for instance, wrong incentives, false claims, for instance, false green claims, and also flagging the harms that are done by companies to your environment and surrounding, can be really close environment. For instance, I don't know, a factory nearby your house that is emitting greenhouse gas emission coming from the production of plastic products, for instance, or a company that is using excessively single-use plastic products, or that is dumping waste outside of dump sites, or that is leaking a lot of chemicals products in your river nearby. Those are really important behaviors to denounce, and you are not without any action means on that side. You can use social medias, but you can also report to local authorities, and you can report to NGOs that are specialized in this kind of behaviors and denouncing this kind of actions from companies. And also, I think it's important to adopt as an individual a really critical and objective approach of the solutions that are proposed by companies when it comes about plastics. We see a lot of false alternatives to plastics, and it's really important to train here and to really be able to distinguish between the best practices from greenwashing, because we see so many greenwashing solutions right now, proposed by many big companies. And actually, it's important to keep in mind that, for instance, even though biodegradable plastics are better than virgin plastics, of course, it's not the final solution, and we can ask for more. We can ask for really real alternatives to plastic that does not contain plastics, because biodegradable plastic is super difficult to recycle and is also super cost extensive to transform in biodegradable plastic actually. So it's really important to keep in mind that it's great to have solution coming from the companies, but it's also great for us to say, okay, but this is not enough. Sometimes it's not transparent process enough. Sometimes we don't have the data available to, really assess if a solution is really green or not. So it's really crucial for us to ask the industry to do more, to be more transparent, to really propose real alternatives to plastics that are not, based on plastic consumption, but maybe find new design away from plastic products and with more sustainable products, components, and also without any additive chemicals. So for that, it's really important to, shift our approach and also be really critical and worry of, some greenwashing solutions that are coming out on a very regular basis, unfortunately. And also, of course, as I said, asking for transparency and information is key. So if you see that on the product, the labeling is missing information on the components, or you cannot read properly what the product is made of, for instance, it's really important to flag and to report to the company, or even sometimes in consumers protection organization, for instance, or NGOs, advocating against plastics. There are many great NGOs working on that as well. So I invite you to share that and to report. And I think I really believe that as young consumers, we have a direct impact, and this is starting with the way and the choices we're making in our daily life consumption. So it really makes a difference. The rules of offer and demand. So it influences markets toward more sustainable and zero waste alternatives when we are consuming real great alternative solution, and not, for instance, of course, virgin plastic, single-use plastic, but also the false alternatives. So I think, the engagement in combating marine pollution and microplastics starts in the choices we are making as an individual. And another way to engage, but I think also this one very well, is grassroots initiatives. And it's so nice to see so many solutions that are proposed at the local scale and that has been proven to be efficient in tackling plastic pollution. There are so many examples, and I think this Climathon was a really great opportunity to do all the solutions that young people have in mind. And it's such an amazing, movement to watch and to participate in. There are many examples, such as the Titanus Plastic Challenge. You probably heard about that, but it was a global movement fighting plastic pollution and gathering many students, young people, and sharing with them, tools to reduce plastic footprint and to convince their community to do the same. And there have been a lot of beach cleaning, also strikes, climate strikes. There have been so many movements and real concrete solution that has been, brought on the table. So yeah, and I think it's great also to say that we are not alone, and we can also ask, and we have to ask the public authorities, the decision makers, and the company to support us, because it's not, it's not our responsibility to manage everything. It's not only our problem; it's a problem of everyone. And as young people, we are, carrying the burden of this pollution, and it's really great we are acting against that. But we also have to ask the member states and the companies to act against that, as they are really also responsible for this pollution, of course. So yeah, advocacy is key here as well. And just also reminding that, of course, we are not, we are facing actually some challenges. And we see that the plastic crisis is overreaching, and it's a global issue that requires worldwide global coordination. And this is really challenging. We spoke about it, but for instance, the time zones, it's a daily struggle. And also just, having a harmonized line advocacy can be challenging, and also just having the opportunity to gather all the on the ground experiences and making the voice heard in the fora that can be challenging sometimes, and especially when we see that quite often decision makers and high level representatives are not considering enough our voice, because they sometimes and too often consider that young people are not expert enough, and that we are not, legitimate to be in the international sphere, even though that is really progressing actually. So now we see some delegates that are really more willing to discuss directly with young people, so that's great. But yeah, it's just important to, and it's crucial to keep in mind that we have the right to be here and we are legitimate enough to be in this decision-making fora. And finally, another, of course, unfortunately, major challenge we are facing is the COVID, because a lot of negotiations at the international level has been postponed. It was really, challenging for us to adapt our advocacy here, and of course, in our daily lives more broadly, the amount of plastic has been drastically increasing. And at the same time, the ways we have to act against that are reducing. In many countries, it was really difficult to go in the streets, for instance, to protest on the climate change, or to meet, for instance, directly the representative, the official, or even like local authority officials. So it was a little bit harder for all of us, I think, to engage on the ground. I hope now it's going to get better, but those are challenges we need to consider, and there are solutions actually to overcome these obstacles. So obviously, engaging virtually is what we are all doing right now. And it's an amazing tool to raise awareness and get visibility by using social medias, organizing webinars, take part in local initiatives, and communicate about them. So over reporting I've mentioned previously, sharing data, sharing information, sharing your own experiences on how you are, impacted by plastic is really important. And there are a lot of institutions, organizations that are willing to receive this information and this testimonies. So please share it, because we are the digital generation, and we are more informed, tech savvy, and connected than any generation before. So this is a great weapon we have to, really make our voice heard on plastics. And another way, of course, you have to engage is to act with us and join us. So great thing is that with a major group for children and youth support, we can, throughout the working group on marine data microplastics, supporting local initiatives worldwide, offer also awareness raising platform and contact points worldwide if you want to, get in touch with other young people working in these areas, but also members of NGOs, for instance. And finally, of course, it's an amazing opportunity to reach decision-making spheres by having mandates, and especially at UNEP. So it's an opportunity to get you an intergovernmental deliberation, and especially at UNEP 5 now, there are so many great opportunities to speak out and to build a momentum against marine litter and for the global agreement, a legally binding treaty. And finally, I will stop there, but just the key point is to make the invisible visible. So share your story as much as you can, participate in Climathon, in great events everywhere you can. And also it's super important to give voices to those that are the most impacted by the plastic crisis. So I'm thinking about young indigenous people, for instance, or young people working in the waste sector. So yeah, it's important for decision makers to hear them. In international fora and everywhere, it's important to make the people that are the most exposed to hazards heard in this fora. And finally, we will participate in UNEP negotiations. So we will lobby for a safe, healthy, and predictable present and future, where the world marine ecosystem are plastic-free, and where plastic is not endangering our health and our environment. So please do not hesitate to join us. And also, it's important to know that you're not alone in this fight, and you'll always be supported and welcome in youth initiative and constituencies. So please feel free to join. And I stop there. I think if you have any question, I'm available. Yeah, I always available to discuss about what I said. If you have any comments, I'd be happy to have them. Yeah, and it's thank you so much for organizing this event, and it's so great to see, you know, all these initiatives and solution proposed. That's just really amazing, really motivating. Sorry, so grateful for that. So. Thanks.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks to you for joining us in this initiative. We are very glad to hear from you and to learn also from you. I don't know if there are questions for Susan. Okay. If not, I invite also to go on the link that Susan was showing. If you are interested to join the UNEP MGCY, also me, Gabriella, Carol, and other people that are organizing this Climathon are part of, and we did a lot of things together, and we really collaborate strictly in order to foster the voice of youth and the solution of youth regarding the mariliter and microplastic working group. So thank you, Susan, for being with us. If you want, I invite you also to stay with us if you are because in a few we are gonna present the solution. So we are giving a little bit more time to the teams to finalize because they are super as I said, in the race, and just give them the time to finalize. But I don't know if there are questions for Susan. Okay, if not, we can do like this. I reopen the breakout room, but maybe there is also another thing that is missing on the program, we can say, and can be also useful for your work. And I saw that here there is Nicolo. I don't know if Nicolo is there at the computer. Nicolo, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but actually I'm connected by my phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
If you want to
I
say a few words, maybe regarding you and I don't know some ideas. We are collaborating also with in this initiative with the Health Advisory Youth, and also they are dealing with the legal frameworks and so on. I don't know if you want to add something on also what Susan said.
absolutely. But first of all, I really enjoyed Susan's intervention because also us from Art Advocacy Youth, we are focused on environmental law, and we follow very closely the activities, especially of the UNMGCY, because we believe that your mission is very close to ours, and maybe in the future we would also love to collaborate more, because what we try to do, and that's something very similar also to what UNEP does, is promoting the rights of nature, so an art-based solution to the international law setting. So we try to influence a little bit international negotiations, such as of course, the COPs, the ICIS treaty, and other international negotiations which deal with all sorts of environmental problems. Especially, of course, in this case today we are talking about marine pollution and trash litter. So also with Domenico, we are organizing a summit which will deal specifically with promoting some campaigns for pushing governments towards the recognition of ICIS treaty. Apart from these, of course, we are just setting, because we are recently new organization, but I mean, our scope is to push towards the adoption and the recognition of our jurisprudence and the rights of nature as the framework for international environmental law in the future. And so this entails that, in short, we believe that nature should have a legal personhood recognized under a strictly legal point of view. So the fact that, of course, nature must be must be given the position to be represented in a tribunal, in a court, in case we have a sort of ecocide, which fortunately has been recognized internationally. But any sort of discrimination in a way that nature has to deal with, we believe that we should use in a way the human tools, the human instruments that we created as a society, especially law, in order to preserve and guarantee rights to the natural elements. This is, of course, the use of something which is anthropocentric, because, of course, law is not something which was created since the beginning of the world. That's something that at least we put it in the books. But again, the scope is ecocentric. So we believe that, of course, someone has to care for nature and for the environment in general. And so we believe that the best way for doing that is, at least in cases in which we have severe damages of the environment, is through courts and tribunals. So again, of course, this is not the only way. We also believe that international cooperation and the international organization setting, especially UNEP and the UNFCCC and all the others, the IPCC, are crucial, are so relevant for enhancing cooperation among states and dialogue between both governments and individuals, especially youth. And that's why I particularly enjoyed what was previously said, because I personally also believe that cooperation is crucial, and we must communicate to each other, especially all those, both organizations and individuals, people, youth that work for having a better planet, a better world. We should talk more and in many more occasions. As the Climathon today has been given the opportunity to do so. And so, yeah, I mean, that's all. And I'm very glad to be here. And for real, I'm really looking forward to see the solutions that participants are going to tailor, because most of the times during these sort of meetings and conferences, a lot is being said. That's the same thing I'm doing today. So we just try to give frameworks and ideas and suggestions, but then it's sometimes complicated to find concrete solutions to these problems. And I think that Climathon is a wonderful chance for showing that youth are not only capable of talking and just complaining, but they can also provide some solutions for real problems, as the ones that El Astillero in Nicaragua is facing. So compliments to all of you, and I'm very happy to see what will be presented by the participants.
Thank you very much, Niccolò. So maybe now let's finalize the solutions that also our friends and our brother are really keen to see. So guys, we have to commit and finalize our solution. I've opened the breakout rooms, so you can join them if you want, or you can work on Discord or by chat, whatever. So just keep in mind that we have given you a little bit more time. So at least since 45 minutes from now. So you have all this time to finalize your solution. The output could be a presentation, a video, some like digital like a way to expose your idea, and then there will be a jury that will judge your idea, both from what you have produced and also from your presentation. And then we'll have finally a winner. Maybe Gabriella, if you want to say something about the prizes.
Yes, so we thought about developing several different ideas. Of course, we're still defining what those will be. But the first one, we thought about sharing the winner, as well as the runners up on our social media platform at Metabolism of Cities Living Lab at San Diego State University, as well as Hubs in Italia, and some other social media platforms. We will also be having, so we will have a social media blast showing the winner, even Ilvis Payo, if he's also, let's say, interested. Perhaps also showing the winner in our MGCY, and providing some recognition of the project. And being named the first, let's say, UNEP MGCY Climathon Big Idea of 2021. We also thought about perhaps having this winning project to be useful for part 2 of our beach protocol, which we will be having towards the end of November in Nicaragua. And we thought that perhaps the winning, let's say, participant can showcase their work at a conference that we will be hosting towards the end of November. Yeah, so we will be sharing the further details on the winner, let's say, recognition and so on.
Thank you, Gabriella. So guys, let's work and let's finalize. And in 45 minutes, we will have like a call. I will ping you if you are okay. Eventually, but I'll say just eventually, we can give other 15 minutes more, but let's finalize now. Okay, so you can join your breakout rooms, and I will stay here connected, and any need, I'm here. And thank you also our guests for like the amazing speech that they performed. Thank you, Susan. Thank you also, Nicolo, for your point. And let's go.
Thank you. Thank you. See you.
You.
I will assign Justin with Domenico.
Yes, okay, okay. Hey, Tony, how are you? Are you there?